Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to thank you all for coming out and for inviting me to share my research with you. I've been going around to different counties in Oklahoma and cities in Oklahoma for the past, 3 years or so to explain how the New World Order is being implemented right in our own backyard. Now, let's say 5 years ago, if someone had told me that, then I would have looked at them and said, oh, come on, you are a conspiracy theorist. This is nuts. Surely something that big would not be rolling out. And I would have just, dismissed them. Well, now I'm on the other side of that. And, just briefly how I got into doing this work, which is, it's just my sort of effort to do my duty to our Lord and to my fellow Oklahomans. I was teaching at the University of Tulsa, and they restructured the entire university. This was in 2019, and it was going to destroy the liberal arts and the honors program. And I taught Western civilization and philosophy in that program. It was a fantastic program. A real bright spot in a dark sea of academia. And I wondered, why on earth would you destroy this program? Why would you destroy a good university? And so I had, being a person who wonders a lot of things, I started digging in, and it was a George Kaiser takeover. It's happening at every university in our country, OU, OSU, TU, ORU, you name it, they're all going the same route. But once I started trying to understand that very concrete situation, I was able to piece together the impetus behind it, and that is an economic program that we're going to talk about today. So just briefly, and I still struggle with technology. So I just have to accept the fact that I'm awkward with it. This is briefly what we're going to do today, and I will make all of these slides available through Shauna. You'll be able to download them, and then the supporting materials. I'll put it in a Google Drive file, and I'll share. I have another big file folder from McAllister, where 2 months ago I did a sort of talk like this. And there is a ton of information, primary source documents that are very relevant to Oklahoma, the land grab, and the new economic order. So that will be available to everyone. But what I'll try to go over today, and I'm going to try to be very fast, although I don't know if I'll be able to really do that. I'm going to talk about the Great Reset. Who's heard of the Great Reset here? Oh, yay, wonderful. Okay, so we'll talk about the Great Reset and what it is. And I was trying to make a pun. I said the nature of the Great Reset because it's like the environment and the economy. I thought it was cute. So we'll talk about this, So we'll talk about the economic overhaul that is behind that program. And it is, I really want to focus on that because in Oklahoma, and especially among conservative audiences, people are really doing a lot of good work defending our children in the schools against, let's say a woke program of transgenderism, of, critical race theory, of all of this garbage. So Oklahomans, especially conservative Oklahomans, are doing very well fighting that moral ideological program. But what they are not seeing is a much bigger picture of economic control. So I want to really talk about what that is. And that's what I'm referring to as a reset. We're going to look at the financial reset because it's run by financiers, bankers, and it has to do with incentives for our behavior that are going to be tradable as currency, okay? And I'll unpack that. So we're going to look at this financial reset as part of the broader economic program, and then I'm going to talk about conservation plans and what I'm calling a capital asset resource management reset. This is the land grab. So there is a new financial system coming into play, and then there are management policies that have to deal with physical assets like land. That's really what we're going to focus on. And both of those work together. And it's actually not, it's not a neat, tidy process of teasing them out one from the other, but I just sort of try so that we can proceed. Is it too? I'm not sure I can. I'm going to try, but it's, I sort of get winded when I'm trying to be so loud. So maybe we can, I don't know, if I move this forward. So we'll go through those two forms of the reset, and then whenever I come to, a city or a county to talk about these things, then I like to look at your city plan or your county plan and show you how this new international economic program is rolling out in your backyard. So I did lots of prep work. I mean, I could have done a lot more, and I am not an expert, but just a few weeks of looking at this stuff, and I can tell you, here are some places in Pawhuska in Osage County where the reset is rolling out. And so we will look at that Osage County reset. Then part 3 is Oklahoma special topics. And I think we can look at issues pertaining to the relationships with tribal nations, especially since we're in Osage County and it's reservation land, and we've just had this landmark Supreme Court decision, McGirt, that directly ties into the reset. So when I heard about the McGirt ruling, and I am not a legal scholar, certainly not a Native American law scholar, I am a sort of prepared amateur looking at these things. So let me give you that qualification. But when I look at the McGirt ruling, which seems like a win for tribal sovereignty, then I am skeptical of its, of its intent and for the so-called benefits that are going to accrue to Native American people because of it. So it's going to, obviously, non-Native Oklahomans are, frustrated by McGirt, but I'm going to also make the argument that Native American Oklahomans should be frustrated by McGirt because it's actually part of the economic reset that is going to measure, manage, monetize you. Okay, so that's our plan, is reset, economic reset, Osage County, and then Oklahoma special topics. Okay, so since most of you know what the reset is, I'll try to go pretty quickly through this. First of all, it comes from think tanks that are populated by bankers and titans of the corporate world, and I would like to argue that the government is basically beholden to these large financial powers. So you have people like Klaus Schwab who say, we are facing an economic downturn, and it could be the worst depression since the 1930s. To achieve a better outcome, we must act jointly and swiftly to revamp all aspects of our societies and economies. And he's not kidding. Every country, every industry, in short, we need a great reset. So it's a program about the future state of global relations. We're moving toward a one world government. It's actually not a government by the people, it's a government by technology, by artificial intelligence and algorithms. So we're moving away from nation states to networked states. That is your AI, your data sharing agreements. smart government, that's what we're moving toward. And it's going to affect everything, including the priorities of society, management of a global commons, and Oklahoma falls under that. Is it just a conspiracy? No. So you can see, I mean, this is a small screen, but I could have added 30 more pictures that all say reset of public education, resetting America's response to COVID-19, reset Louisiana's future. Look, the logo is exactly the same as what's on Klaus Schwab's book, okay? So one reason why I think I was able to see a lot of what was going on and learn it very quickly is because I studied philosophical symbols of order and disorder. And I'm good at recognizing patterns. So, you know, you just have to look at any mainstream media and you will see these buzzwords over and over again. And when you see the same thing over and over again, same pattern, something is up. Because human beings usually think differently. We have different experiences. But everything is moving toward homogenization. So it's not a conspiracy. The background for the new international economic order, or for the reset, is the UN International Economic Order. So this is a resolution. I don't expect you to be able to read it, but just so you know, I have evidence. 1974, they pass the Declaration on the Establishment of a New International Economic Order, a program of action of unprecedented scope, and with the goal of exerting maximum efforts with a view to securing the implementation of the present declaration. So there is a binding UN resolution going back to 1974. It's been reiterated many times, and so the New World Order is not primarily moral or ideological, it's economic. Okay, so this is a clip from the World Economic Forum, WEF's website, and their article is How the Finance Industry Can Save the World. So we're going to hear the rhetoric of crisis over and over again. It's a climate crisis. It's an immigration crisis. It is a moral crisis. It's, you name it, it's a weather crisis. They present these to us so that they can then cause a reaction that is going to make us demand a solution. So problem, reaction, solution. And their problem is global warming and the climate. And they say the UN has a report, so that's how it ties into the UN again, that we're all going to die. Business is going to be imperiled. Everything's going to go to pot unless we dramatically reduce the temperature of this planet. Okay, it's a goofy argument, but it is useful because people, it's so big that, is it, oh, okay. Thank you. So it's a useful tall tale because many of us lack the expertise to be able to disprove climate change ourselves. Or if you, I mean, I think it's possible that there's climate change, but I think it's probably all of the aerosols that are sprayed to control precipitation and drought, and then immigration. So, you know, our military forces, and unfortunately, are, you know, they are seeding clouds, they are controlling the rain in order to cause droughts and sort of preempt migration so that we can control it better. It's a mess. But their problem is climate change, and the solution is to completely overhaul the world economy. They do not even try to conceal what they're up to. It's a massive economic overhaul. that requires a complete rethinking of the global financial value system. This is important because we're actually moving away from money. We are moving into a social credit system that is one of, here's a buzzword for you, a true value. So if you go and download the corporate documents from all of these financial think tanks and business roundtable groups, the chambers of commerce, they're all talking about pursuing true value. True value is social credit. That's what it is. It's ESG metrics, and it is a behavioral program of compliance. So you're going to get credits for doing good things. Oh, you've recycled today, then you get a couple of tokens to use at Sprouts, you know? And so we're going to be exchanging these credits for good behavior, and you're going to have little banks of tokens, and you won't even need money. So that's where we're going. And true value is moving our financial system away from money and prices. You know, prices are a way for us to come to an agreement on the value of a thing, right? Because I might think it's worth this much, but you might think it's worth this much. And a price helps us negotiate that discrepancy if there is one. Well, we're moving away from a price-based economy and away from money into social credits, so that, you know, recycling gets you 2 tokens at Sprouts. It's kind of like if your employer if they offer you a gift card to Quick Trip for, you know, filling out surveys or doing some volunteer work. Well, wouldn't you rather just have the $10 so that you could do whatever you want with it? But no, we're giving gift cards away. That's training for this system. Okay, so when we talk about the global value system, that's what the economy is going to be based off of. And we are shifting this, again, according to the WEF, we're going to shift financial incentives toward more sustainable investments. So you've heard of ESG. Who's sort of familiar with the concept of ESG? Okay, that is corporate social responsibility, environmental social governance. And companies, businesses are going to be incentivized at first to comply with these UN and WEF stakeholder capitalism metrics for environmental social governance outcomes. And you know, they will get to put a little badge in their window that says green business, or work, you know, top 10, you know, happiest employees award, you know. So they get these little badges that make them look good to the public. This is a way of giving reputation capital benefits to corporations who do the right thing, right? That's going to work for a while, but then there are going to be penalties. So companies that don't participate in ESG tracking, tracing, reporting, they will be penalized, and they will not be able to receive capital investments from the large bankers who control all the money. So at first you get a badge in the window that says, oh, you're a good, you know, good global citizen, corporate citizen. Next you're going to lose access to capital to run your business because you have not pursued these environmental social governance goals that are linked to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which are the, you know, the rubric or the standard for true value. And we can, if that's dense, we can talk about it after in the Q&A. But that's where we're going. And so this reset is about shifting financial incentives toward investments that promote the UN global goals. So instead of, and I hear people all the time say, oh, well, we're transitioning to electric vehicles, and people say, that's never gonna fly in Oklahoma because it's oil and gas, and companies are gonna lose all this money. And my response is, yeah, they don't care about money. They know that we are moving away from money in our economic system. We're moving to the credits, the tokens, and so, they're going to do much better in terms of balance sheet capacity by not chasing a profit. So this whole program is sold to you and to corporate executives on, or it's not sold this way, but it is based on appealing to your higher instincts to not want to look greedy and profit driven. And I would agree with that, except now, once I have spent so much time reading about this, I think you need to pursue profits, okay? Profits are good. But, the big companies, they all understand that we're moving away from money, so they don't care about not, getting their quarterly earnings. That's why Ford is not going to make any gas-powered vehicles. And Exxon, British Petroleum, P66, these companies are going to wrestle here and there with, oh, well, our earnings are down, so we need to, back up. That is for public appearances only, in my opinion. It's just, because they know what's coming, they're prepared for it. Okay, again, this is just, in this article, it's just amazing to me how unabashed they are in saying, we want a global economic initiative that has no documented historic precedent ever. This is the scope that we're going to. Oh, whoops, I went backwards, see? Okay, so what is this about? It's about sustainable development. That is the program that was developed out of the UN, New International Economic Orders. That resolution led later to the articulation of the Agenda 21 Rio Declaration that talks about sustainable development. That's later iterated in the 2030 Agenda. It's all the same garbage. And what it is balancing economic growth, and social inclusion sort of falls under there because like ESG and these social credits go with the economy, with environmental protection and resource management. Now, really it all blurs together, okay? But the Sustainable Development Agenda is about balancing economic growth with conservation and stewardship. Now, my argument is that it has absolutely nothing to do with really protecting for the earth and its resources and the animals and plants and the people who live here. It's all economic. It is about controlling energy flows, controlling those currencies, and really I think it's a satanic program because these people who are doing it hate God and they hate His creation. Amen. Okay, so but it's sold to the people at the leadership institutes, the chambers of commerce, the business schools, etc. By it's sold in terms of managing risk so that we can have a reward into the future. If you manage risk properly, you will future-proof your industry. That's how I know it's satanic. Future-proofing, come on. We're limited human beings, we cannot see the future and we cannot proof for it. But look in your city, Pawhuska you guys are in the process of developing a comprehensive plan. Tell them you don't want it to be future-proof. So, what they want to do is they want to promote growth and protect the environment. Anytime you see in any city plan, it can be a mobility plan, an innovation plan, a public arts and culture plan. Sorry, I get worn out trying to project. You're always going to see the communitarian balancing formula. Now, communitarianism is different from communism. It's close, but it's got a sort of capitalist free market flair to it. It's communism with a free market twist. And that's what ESG is all about. It's about making this homogenizing top-down program look like it is consistent with the free market. That's why all of these businesses are going to have the social pressure to pursue ESG goals, because people think, oh yeah, it's the free market, and they won't do it if it's not profitable. People are too optimistic. They're too naive. They will do it if it's not profitable because we're moving away. But anytime you see that formula of economic growth and protecting natural resources, you are dealing with a New World Order program every time. And with small towns, I'm from Tulsa, really I'm from Arkansas. Tulsa, they're just going to tell you, we want economic growth and we want sustainability. Well, in rural Oklahoma, sustainability might set off alarm bells. So instead of using that term, they say we're going to protect the rural character. We're going to protect the rural way of life. It's the same garbage. Anytime you see that balanced growth with conservation, you have a New World Order program. And if you just start making people aware of these patterns, it will be harder for them to call you crazy. But we all have to talk about it, I mean, this is something we really have to bring this into the public conversation. Like, I cannot figure out which way to go. Okay, so how is the finance industry going to save the world? Well, the problem with the capitalist system, because the WEF is going to always say, we don't want to ditch capitalism, because then they would trigger people. They say, we want to reinvent it, we want to reimagine it, we want to make it regenerative, all buzzwords. So they say, we're going to refine it, though, and improve it. How? Well, you can see through our problem is vague metrics of success, profit, what we should be pursuing, faulty metrics, and siloed metrics. So what's the solution? You need more data collection, you need better metrics, you need universally accepted metrics, and that will allow you to measure, manage, and monetize everything. So we're gonna reinvent capitalism by establishing some really clear-cut universal metrics that are gonna directly lead to global government, but not by elected officials from any country. It's gonna be by the stakeholder corporate boards. So the UN is it's a puppet, just like our government in Washington is a puppet to the corporations. And the big philanthropists. And we have, I started looking at George Kaiser because he took over TU. So I focus on, I like to call him out because there are lots of others, but in Oklahoma, we have, he's something like the 9th richest man in America. He's got a lot of power and a lot of money. And it's his idea, he's controlling the shots here. And then they tell us, they're always so nice, the finance industry can solve the very problems it created. How? Oh yeah, we're really that stupid, But so it talks about reinventing our economic relations in order to disincentivize all of the exploitive and extractive economic activities that have led to the climate crisis and are going to result in doom for all of us. Okay, so what they want to do it with better metrics and more data, more data, more data. How are they going to get it? Well, we have to I should talk about a tech reset. That should be a third topic here. But we have to understand the fourth industrial revolution, which is that is the program of all of these extreme technologies in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, information and communications technologies, nanotechnology, all of the technologies that are available to the large corporations, to our governments, to the military, to anyone who has, lots of money and status. They are so far beyond what any of us know about. I remember my dad, you remember that movie with Will Smith, Enemy of the State? I mean, that's like an old movie. And my dad and I watched it together. I was a teenager, I guess. And he said, Julianne, they could do all of that stuff 20 years ago. I was like, nuh-uh. Now I believe him. But the fourth industrial revolution dreams of billions of people connected by mobile devices with unprecedented processing power, storage capacity, and access to knowledge. This is going to lead to smart cities. Okay, that's where we're headed with this. Every city is becoming a smart city. You don't have to be on a list that you find on the internet to confirm that you are turning into a smart city. Every single place is doing it. At Tulsa, we've got a smart city report. We have the whole plan. Autonomous vehicles, drone delivery. It's a whole, what is that, Blade Runner type, Terminator type scenario. They are doing it, and they have the technology, and what do they really want to do is blur this physical, digital, biological sphere. So going back again to, I'm just proving to you about what this reset is about. It's about creating smart cities because the new economy runs on data. It all runs on data. So data about, did you recycle? So think of corporate responsibility. Did your company hire so many people from diverse backgrounds, right? Well, we want to make sure that what you report about your commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion is accurate. And one of I didn't mention it, but in a slide just a minute ago, it talks about greenwashing. There's diversity washing, equity washing, inclusion washing. So, when we're attaching a financial incentive to those sorts of activities, hiring enough indigenous people to, be on your corporate board or whatever, you can pick any of these goals. If that kind of behavior is going to be the basis of you receiving more credits at the company store, receiving more tokens, they want to be able to prove it. Through what? Through the connected Internet of Things that's going to track and trace all of your behavior, all of who you talk to, how long you search for something, this and that. And that is going to ensure that the corporations are really reporting their corporate social responsibility activities correctly. So in other words, their profits, which is going to be a store of credits that you can trade, those are going to be dependent on contributing to these ESG objectives. But because those are qualitative, was I nice to Black people? Was I environmentally friendly? Was I a good participant and engaged citizen in my community? Those things are harder to track and trace than, did you spend this money? Did you purchase this? Did you pay your taxes? Those sorts of things, right? It's harder to prove that you have a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, unless you have the Internet of Things that tracks and traces everything you do and can verify that some corporation or you individually or your government or the charity that you work for is actually doing it. So they're rolling out this surveillance state, smart cities, not for your safety, not for the environment. It's so that they can implement this new economic system that rewards good behavior and penalizes you for bad behavior. That's what it's about. And, just controlling you in your zones. And they also like to test things. They like to test these different social interventions, like they do in charter schools. We're gonna try this pilot program here and see if it works. Well, the smart city collects all the data, and the 15-minute city that fences you into a little pod that you can't leave. Oh, but you have these nice things within walking distance. That it limits the number of variables that could, mess up their social experiments. So that's why they want to do it. So this is all about, the technology to measure, manage, and monetize data. That is the basis of the new economic system. And there are conservative versions of this, just like there are liberal progressive versions. So, we're going to have to get some major coalitions between the yellow dog Democrats and the progressive Democrats and the Republicans and the libertarians and the people who don't even care. All sorts of coalitions, because this affects everyone, and they've got a woke leftist ideology right now, but they can go alt-right just as easily. Because it's just all about shifting things. They make money off of changing behavior. But what a smart city is, it provides the foundation for all the key themes related to a smart city, including smart people, smart mobility, smart economy, smart living, smart governance, and smart environment. Core characteristic is that these technologies generate data and talk about it. So the smart growth, if your city has an infrastructure based around technology, and you guys are rolling out broadband here, as I was driving on that beautiful highway from Tulsa, I was like, oh, this countryside is gorgeous. It is gorgeous. You don't have all of the spikes, in the earth and the tower, and you don't have it, and protect that. But I've seen you have a broadband plan, and it's coming. They want to leave no one behind. So there's your infrastructure based on technology. These are core aspects of a smart city. Environmental initiatives. Do you have them? Yep, you've got them. We're going to look at them. Effective, highly functional public transportation. I don't know if you guys have that yet, but you're going to get it. They want to take away your car. Confident and progressive city plans, visions. We're visioning, we're reimagining garbage, garbage, garbage. And people able to live and work within the city using its resources. That means you don't have to leave ever. Okay, I'm going to sort of skip through here, but just know that this reset has to do also with governance. So we're moving away from government to governance. So stakeholder capitalism, that is the new model for making decisions about how we ought to live our lives. And you'll see public-private partnerships, task forces, unelected appointed officials that are going to make decisions that have the force of law. That's why you need a really good sheriff in your county. Because we are, if you look at Tulsa, there are layers and layers of public-private partnerships, so no one knows who is doing anything and no one's responsible. And I think it's a money laundering operation, to be honest. But that is what governance gets you, is experts making regulatory decisions and developing these plans, comprehensive plans to control our quality of life. So this is the UN's new urban agenda, and it says these are the areas that we're going to focus on: rural development, land use, food security and nutrition, management of natural resources, provision of public services, water, sanitation, health, environment, energy, housing, mobility, etc. Anytime that those are in your city plan or county plan, you are dealing with a New World Order program. Now, it's hard to convince people of that because you think, well, the ordinary business of a city is to manage, like how people move and roadways, and really I think that falls to the county, but then they delegate some authority to the municipalities. So it doesn't set off alarm bells until you see it everywhere. Okay, so these sectors, they're all ones that can be measured, managed, monetized. And we're going to see public-private partnerships where different corporations and nonprofit groups contract with the government to deliver these outcomes because government's going to be bankrupt. Okay, so this is, we're going to integrate urban and rural plans. So just because you live far away from Tulsa or Oklahoma City does not mean you're safe. You just have a little bit more time, because what are they doing? They're smashing people slowly into mega regions, okay? So what happened with like COVID and the crazy response by our Bloomberg-backed mayor? George Kaiser and Michael Bloomberg are investment partners. I cannot make this up. And they invest in social impact programs, helping poor kids, but they measure, manage, monetize them, right? Okay, so what did Tulsa do? It went very severe on this stuff. People moved out to the suburbs. They want out, because not all of us are crazy liberals, whatever. So then Tulsa begins to decay, and the developers come in and they buy the land on the cheap. And then they're going to do the same thing. When all these people who've moved out to Jenks, they're going to get pushed back in. Claremore, they're going to get pushed into Tulsa, because this is a stack and pack smart cities model. And so, this new urban agenda talks about that. Okay, let me skip. Okay, so the land grab. Everyone, I have another talk. I actually have two talks where we go, well, no, just one, I think, where I talk about the federal land grab. This is a 30 by 30 plan. What this is, they say, well, we want to conserve these beautiful places. We want to ensure that we can use them and enjoy them into the future. So there's your risk management, and it is linked to strengthening the economy's foundation. So see, the report calls for this effort, locally led, oh, it sounds so good, right? Locally led voluntary conservation and restoration efforts across public, private, and tribal lands and waters in order to create jobs and strengthen the economy's foundation, tackle the climate crisis and nature crisis, and address inequitable access to the outdoors. So there's your balancing formula. Conservation, economics, but it's all about the economics. But they sell it to people like, oh, well, you like the hunting and fishing lifestyle? Well, we better protect your forest, or else an invasive species is going to come in and eat up all the trees, and then you can't hunt anymore or whatever. But they're trying to get, 30% of our lands and waters into permanent protection status by the year 2030, and then 50% by 2050. I have in the red, they want to do this at the same time as they honor and support natural and cultural resource priorities of tribal nations. So my argument is that the tribes are getting used and abused. They are just, there is a perception that the Native American people are closer to nature. I think there's probably some truth to that historically, but that's being exploited. It's being blown out of proportion. It is, they actually talk about getting, if we conserve these lands, then Native Americans will get to participate in non-market labor activities. Basically, they're saying like forage and be subsistence. It's so demeaning, right? But they play on these stereotypes and stuff. So America the Beautiful report, my argument is that it's not really a federal land grab, it's a global land grab. It's about protecting biodiversity, which the U.S. signed onto the UN's biodiversity agreement. They want to track, trace, catalog all genetic material. And part of protecting biodiversity is decommissioning 30% of land. So they just don't want you to own anything. They want you'll own nothing and be happy. It's also, my argument, this is under resource management. So this is the reset of how we own property, deal with our resources and things like that. It's not a public program, it's really a private program. So this is where I mentioned communitarianism, and it is like communism with this capitalist free market veneer. That's what this is. So it talks about how most of the land, especially those really environmentally important lands, those are controlled by private landholders. It could be like the Nature Conservancy. It could be an individual. It could be, the Army Corps of Engineers, I think, is considered a private landowner. But the conservation effort from the federal government, which is a global effort, it is set up to appeal to private landowners. So what they're going to do is they're going to offer you little carrots. Oh, if you agree to protect this species, if you agree to limit hunting, if you agree not to develop, you'll get this. You'll get a break from future taxes. You'll get some biodiversity credits to use at the company store. You'll get all this stuff. And they're going to start that way, but then it's going to be a stick, okay? And here you can see, this is the key, this is a report from a nonprofit. They've got all the big money, so you need to read their white papers. It talks about conservation banking. So these new market-friendly incentives are going to be the tools by which they pull land into these permanent trusts that prevent development. They appeal to private landowners, and they have the veneer of a free market economy. So conservation banking is one of their innovative tools for doing this. And this is another tool for private conservation is conservation banking. These banks are permanently designated stretches of land for which the Fish and Wildlife Service approves a certain number of habitat or species credits to the landowner. So see, this is what our economy is moving toward, trading credits. These credits can then be sold to developers to mitigate the impact of their planned projects on species. They're doing that on the reservations too. So, and I get to that at the end. Tribes are going to be offered a certain number of credits that then they can sell to non-tribal developers, but it is a Ponzi scheme. It's not going to help the environment, and it's just fake value. And then this land grab is not really about land, it's about data. So global, private, data-driven. That's your new economic order. What did they want to do? Measure progress for nature and people. We want measurable goals for conservation. We want to know the baseline, understand the trends, and then catalyze collective action. That is, in a nutshell, the business of tracking impact. Here's A, situation A. Here's an intervention that you're going to apply, and it's going to get you to situation B. And there's a change there, a differential. And you have market speculators that are going to make big bets on, think of it like the Vegas spread. Are you going to hit the spread or you're not? And that should be very relevant to Native American topics, because they use gaming actually as a model for this new economy. I have proof of that for you. So, so our reset is global, privatized, data-driven, comprehensive. Just at the bottom, the top of this is recap, but at the bottom, comprehensive plans. So your city plan, county plan, mobility plan, whatever it is. These are frameworks for implementing the measured and managed economy. It's not pretty, is it? So these smart city policies, 4IR technologies, conservation policies, land grabs, it's all for the new economy. Okay, so Osage County, this is the fun stuff, right? Are you doing it? Are you implementing it here? Is Julianne crazy? Well, you guys have, look, Smart Growth America comes to Pawhuska. We've got Smart Growth America, this is Bloomberg funded, all over Tulsa, everything. And I recommend signing up for Smart Growth America's little email blast. I do, and they just tell you everything that they're gonna do, from complete streets to, smart buildings, new governance models. It's all there. I do not use YouTube. I do not use InfoWars. I look at corporate sites, government documents. It's all right there. You need nothing of the stuff on the internet that's like, media analysis of this. So you were actually a case study. Pawhuska was a case study. So they're going to roll out ecotourism here, and you have, a certain famous cook. I love her meatballs. That is, you have all of these new attractions to make your city a destination rather than a flyover zone. See, when I do this, it means I'm using their language. So you have this great booming tourism, but it's caused problems with traffic and congestion, and pedestrians are getting hit all over the place. That's what they argue. I mean, I read it. I jazzed it up for you. But then, so we need smart traffic management, because the influx of people visiting the Pioneer Women's, place, or the new park that we're building, or the Heartland Veneta, crazy, what is that, 2 million? It's just a mess. But, all of these new economic development opportunities, those are, one, they're not going to help small towns at all, because you do not want to become a tourist trap. That does not help the real economy of a small town. But two, then it's used to justify the rollout of smart streets, smart transportation, Agenda 21 stuff. So yeah, you're doing it. Okay, flock safety cameras. Oh, people in Tulsa love these. But guess what? This is to keep all the bad people out of my neighborhood. This is because car-related crimes cost so much money, and we want to prevent that, and then it's going to be wonderful. They always look at these future cost offsets. So they, of course, roll it out in the poor neighborhoods first. I mean, homeowners associations, you can buy these cameras for your home, for your neighborhood. And they're supposed to take a picture of the license plate. And then if something terrible happens, the police they have the license plate. But the city of Tulsa is contracting with Flock Safety, and they start at one of the poorest intersections. It's a kind of high crime, predominantly black neighborhood. So all the nice middle-class white people are like, they really need it over there. They've got a lot of crime. Let's put in all these cameras and surveil the people inside and out, and real-time data tracking of all your movements. They're doing it. I mean, this is 1,200 law enforcement agencies across the country. When that kind of united action occurs all at once, you've got a top-down plan, and somebody's making a lot of money off of it, because people in Connecticut and people in Oklahoma don't do the same thing normally. But when all of these law enforcement agencies, flock safety is the best thing ever. No, it's Israeli intelligence. It's going to measure, manage, and monetize everything. It is critical infrastructure that we cannot control in our borders. Okay, so we are outsourcing a key component of what is being bought as critical infrastructure, but this is also the surveillance that's going to charge you for the miles that you travel. And Oklahoma has a pilot program to charge you for how many miles you travel. Yep, they're piloting it. Okay, City of Tulsa is a surveillance nightmare, and it violates all sorts of rights. Okay, but you guys are doing the flock safety cameras. I would say tell your police officers and law enforcement officers that that technology is designed to make them obsolete. My husband just went to Houston and saw one of those night scope robots. Like, we want human beings who can use good judgment and discretion as our law enforcement officers. But they are putting cameras and robots and all kinds of terrible stuff out there. So when your police department, like Tulsa's, you know, I went to a community meeting and there was one police officer behind me, and I said, you know, I said all this stuff, and he just kind of patted me on the back. He's like, keep it up. I'm like, come on, I can't be the only one. Like, you know, they will not have a job. Okay, tell them, do not sign a contract with Flock Safety. It's Peter Thiel's organization. He's an investor, and he tracks and traces refugees. Okay, I'm so behind on this. Okay, here's your new economy based on public-private partnerships with, guess what, Tulsa is, oh yeah, Kaiser email. He's telling you about federal grants to do 4IR technology here. It's all surveillance. Drones, strings attached. Okay, and your economic development. You know, this is like a clip from your paper. You're doing broadband, community healthcare, that's an impact opportunity sector, housing. You know, look at the UN global goals. All those different areas those are the metrics for seeing whether or not you are complying. Are you doing good behavior here? Then you're going to get rewarded. If you're not, you won't. And actually, the big investors don't care if you are pursuing the goals or, you know, totally ignoring them, because they can make money betting on the spread either way. So also, do you have a land resources program? Yes, this is Nature Conservancy, the Flint Hills, the Osage Plains Flint Hills Prairie Conservation Plan is doing what? Implementation of biodiversity conservation strategy straight from the UN. You're gonna have data centers. It talks about the majority is in private ownership, so remember that land grab is global, it is private, and it is data driven. So what are they going to try to do here? We want to abate development-based threats by talking to the private sector and getting them to voluntarily take lands out of you know, the full public use status. Infuse conservation values into legislation. They do a lot of propaganda, and they want to implement these managed area status tracts of land to put them into permanent protection. So watch that prairie, because what they really want to do, and I'll get to this in a minute, is they want to overlay the tribal reservation with that conservation zone, and they want to remediate the fractured nature of the reservation. So they're going to make the argument for expanding the tribal reservation in terms of economic sovereignty of the tribes and the importance of having contiguous land for comprehensive planning that is, you know, going to generate better economic growth. That's how they make the argument. They're going to do it in a conservation zone. So even though it looks like the tribes are getting more power, they're actually going to lose all of it because of these conservation easements. Yeah, so expanding the reservation is only an expansion if the tribal citizens can protect that reservation against these conservation easements and policies. So 2 things, we want to measure and manage capital assets, and we want to impose the new economy. So here are a couple of things. I'll just mention them very briefly. Reset special topics. Okay, related to the Oklahoma, and I'm calling it a tribal reset, so McGirt, I won't go through that because you guys are probably sick to death of talking about it, but it expands reservation status. It applies to all 5 tribes, really applies nationally. Every single country in the world is doing this, giving land back to the tribes. That's one way that it is a scam. Because not everyone's that virtuous and not everyone thinks about doing this at the same time. So the second topic is tribal sovereignty and intergovernmental cooperation. So with McGirt, there are all sorts of questions about jurisdiction. Let me tell you, it is not just about the geographical boundaries of a reservation or the jurisdiction of a tribe to be able to try cases and punish offenders and so on. It's actually about creating confusion so that you have to enter into a cooperative arrangement with the state of Oklahoma or with the federal government. That is part of a merger and acquisition. This is an economic program, right? It's not environmental. It's not a tribal program. This is an economic program, and it's about a merger and acquisition. So what do our New World Order resetters want to do? They want to destroy the state governments, because states actually provide a way of protecting the people's rights from federal intrusion. So they want to destroy the states by bankrupting them through all sorts of means, COVID lockdowns, tax incentives for giant corporations to locate here, giving land back to the tribes so that tax revenues, fall, any number of ways. They want the state of Oklahoma to be bankrupt. Why would they want to do that? Because then, the state of Oklahoma still has entitlement programs to run. And they got to pay for those by law. Well, if they can't do it, where's the money going to come from? Oh, let's find a free market solution. George Kaiser and all his buddies at the Tulsa Community Foundation are going to give a lot of grants to the state of Oklahoma, and we're going to partner up. We're going to partner up. And that is outsourcing government. And they do it with native tribal governments, and they do it with non-native. But the goal is to destroy the state of Oklahoma, state of Arkansas, state of Texas. That's it. Because then you have mega regions controlled by the federal government. And you have charter cities and corporate zones. So they're talking about tribal sovereignty, but it's a ploy. Create confusion. Why? So that, state of Oklahoma and the tribes have to work together on criminal justice. I know I'm throwing so much at you, and I apologize. We're almost done. But just know that when you hear this is giving sovereignty back to the tribes, is actually creating a situation in which cooperation with the state government or with the federal government is about to occur, and that is a way to merge the two together, and then they can be, that's just one more obstacle down in the destruction of our country. Okay. So, and this is, I've got sections from a Tulsa Law Review. At TU, they used to have one of the top Native American law programs in the nation. Understandably, we're in Oklahoma. Well, that program was really chopped during the restructure. And they got a lot of heat for it. So then they hired another Indian law professor back. But this professor, if I remember, it's been a long time since I looked at it, she was interested in mental health, healthcare, tribal policy around healthcare, impact tracking, measure, we had this bad baseline before, now we've improved it, bing. Okay, but the law review article, this is all about McGirt, and it argues for cooperative agreements. This is the really interesting one. In that same law review article, a guy from Edmond wrote it. It is about digital economic zones, a program for comprehensive tribal economic sovereignty. See, who doesn't want a flourishing economy? Everybody wants more money. So they tell you this is going to bring economic growth, this is going to bring economic sovereignty, and you get the woke crowd, you get the conservative Christian crowd, everybody wants a good economy. This is their ace in the hole. So they're going to sell you these digital economic zones, and what are they? This is something that you can do on the reservation, and as we're giving more power back to the tribes, they become a possibility. These are tribally chartered financial systems in the United States. Now, in our Constitution, only the U.S. federal government has the power to coin and print money, right? I mean, there are a lot of problems with, but because the tribes are now, they get to operate in this nation-to-nation status, they always should have, but it's very complicated, and I don't pretend to know all of it. But this is how they're using, the tribes, as nations, they could start their own financial systems. And as long as some company has data on a server that's located on a reservation, and go look at the Mid-American Industrial Park and all the data servers and all that, I don't even want to know. I don't go near that place. As long as some corporation agrees to have data on these tribal servers, they can incorporate with the tribe, and they can have a charter for corporate activity, don't have to pay taxes to the state of Oklahoma, and they get to participate in this new digital currency. So your tribes, you've all heard about the horrors of CBDC, central banking digital currency. And we know it's coming. There is the beast system, and they're going to do it. But I think that they're going to do it. They've got lots of little programs in the works, but I think they're going to do it through the tribes. They're going to roll out, this is a federated digital currency. So if we want 100% tribally governed economic jurisdiction, and now everyone's like, rah, rah, yay, yay. Well, the federal government is, beware of the federal government bearing gifts as a Trojan horse. Beware of the state government, of philanthropists, is a Trojan horse. They're offering tribal leaders economic sovereignty, but here's what they're going to do. Tribal banking and financial services code, federated digital currency, blockchain security for instantaneous verification of financial transactions based on credits, and tribal public bank and federal loan guarantee. This is the end. Digital economic zones, they're located within the nation's reservation, use sovereign regulatory powers to help make the nation a leading destination for business development. E-corporations, and then here is, it's on the next one, the Fluent Token Protocol. So in South Carolina, the Catawba Native American tribe has entered into public-private partnerships with tech investors, bankers, all the bad guys. And they are being used to roll out a digital currency under the Fluent Token Protocol that has parity with the US dollar, and it is pursuant to a legally compliant set of operating regulations and confirmed cash reserve requirements. There's your digital currency through the tribes. So, is a new economic order happening? Yes. I'm going to skip this because this is about impact programs on tribal lands, and it talks about all these good things that are going to be done for the tribes, but it's all about the data. And they're doing the same thing with non-tribal citizens. They're doing the same thing in poor communities as more affluent communities. They want to create, in affluent communities, they want to, if we do this, is it going to make people more likely to volunteer? Ooh, woohoo! Any kind of changing of behavior can become a basis for financial gain in this new economy. So I apologize for taking way too long, but if we know what's happening, like really know it, and you can look at a plan, because they are all the same plan. I cannot, if you look at one of these plans, you're gonna see it's a template. But if you know how they work with, this is about the economics, this is about moving away from money, this is about taking resources out of commission and putting them off limits so that individuals like you and I cannot use them. Only the collective can govern those, the community. If we know those patterns, then you can call people out on it. And we have to have a very large, very public, vocal opposition to this stuff. And you know, like I said, we are moving toward governance, which is a corporate model that's going to be run by technology. That's going to be what imposes order and regulation in our lives. So just think, if you have a problem and you try to call Amazon Corporation or Walgreens or Walmart or any of these places, what happens? Can you actually get through? Or are you waiting on the phone forever and ever and nothing ever gets solved, and you want to throw the phone through the, you know? That's what this is going to be like. You're going to be trapped, constantly updating. So do we want that, or do we want our lousy government that's run by criminals right now in Washington? Do we want to keep that? I think we want to keep the devil that we know. And we want to try to clean it up. So we have to have massive public opposition to these plans, and we have to embarrass any public official who refuses to listen to the people and do what his constituents want. And you know, if they are on the side of the reset for economic growth, we got to be able to call them out and shame them publicly, because this is a social credit system. We want their social credit to go down. So with that, thank you very much for tolerating a very long-winded speech.
Juliana, it looks like it's about control and
Yes.
and property rights.
Yes.
So what are the techniques that they're going to use to actually confiscate our personal property?
Well, you know, okay, so the question was, what are the techniques that they're going to use to confiscate your personal property? You know, is there going to be economic techniques? So there are going to be regulations on what you have to do to your land, or, you know, a building structure or your car, in order to be compliant with city ordinances. So this is a boiling frog problem. So like in Tulsa, you know, if you're going to sell a house, you can't have knob and tube electrical wiring. This is an old example, right? But that was an old electrical system. The city passed a code that said, you know, this is not safe, so you can't buy or sell a house that has it. That puts the burden of upgrading that system on the property owner, and it's going to be like that for everything. So, you know, we're seeing our water bills go up, our sewage bills go up, everything, you know, these little fees. Oh, well, you got to pay to park downtown. You know, you're going to have to pay per mile to drive. So it's going to be a barrage of fees, and, you know, as people get smarter and decide, oh, well, I don't want to drink this tap water that's got fluoride in it. Oh, you have to pay for these expensive filters. So it's going to be a slow drain, and then people are just going to lose it, either by confiscation or they're just going to have to sell.
They're actually talking about doing that with ceiling fans right now. So.
Part of that is with, like in the comprehensive plans, is when they're accepting the federal money for these sustainable goals, they'll do riparian buffers along your waterways on private land. And that'll be part of the new zoning, is that if you have like a creek through your property, because it's all waterways, in the county, you will have to have a riparian buffer, meaning you're not going to be able to access the water for so many feet to keep the water clean and prevent the banks from eroding. Now, you can either pay for the permit, and you can pay to install the native grasses and trees that the county now tells you you're allowed to have, and fencing it off because you can't have animals or anything near it, or you can sign a conservation easement and we'll pay for it for you.
Yeah.
But with that conservation easement, in order to qualify for that, you also have to now agree to a public bike and hiking trail that runs along it. So if you don't agree to the public bike and hiking trail through your private property along your waterway, then you have to pay for the permitting, you have to pay for the seed for the trees, for the bushes, whatever the county says, and you're still not allowed to let your animals drink from that creek. You're not allowed within 20 feet of it. Now, if you when you lock property into a conservation easement, kiss it goodbye. If I'm leasing property from you to run cattle on, I can apply for a conservation easement without your knowledge on your property.
For real, that's true?
100% for real. So if you have people on your property, make sure you're signing a contract that they are not allowed to apply for any federal grants, conservation easements, county grants, or public-private partnerships.
And where do you get this information?
There is a handout that I brought for 30 by 30 for American Stewards for Liberty. You can go onto that website. They have a ton of information about conservation easements. They have slideshows from their summits from previous years. And it'll go through, it's going through every federal agency, and they're redoing regulations to the agencies constantly. One that they just finished accepting rules on was changing the rules for the Endangered Species Act for the habitats, where before it was data-driven and there were multiple inputs to how much land around that habitat would be locked up. Now it gets to be decided by one person.
Huh.
Yeah, and it doesn't. And now they can also include additional acreage where it's uninhabited, but we need additional land in case they start to move out.
Yeah.
So we're gonna lock up more land.
If you look at that Nature Conservancy plan for Osage Plains area, it talks about all of that. How much land a species needs, how those decisions are determined, and I would suggest, most of us don't have that kind of expertise in the different areas. We don't have the expertise in how the tech works. We don't have the expertise to argue against climate change based on a knowledge of geophysical interactions, and they bank on that. So I think that is an obstacle that has prevented a lot of people from getting involved in these fights, because you say, well, I don't have the information to be able to argue against it intelligently. Well, my cheerleader speech to you is, it's all, this is, well, on the technical issues, they are manipulating it so that they can impose their new economy. And we have to decide that we don't care if we look silly or not. We're going to argue against it on the terms of, this destroys our freedoms, this hurts, our economic, potential. You've got to make the argument like this. You say, these are the buzzwords. I know the New World Order plans. I've seen the documents, and I don't want it. And we have to be willing to look sort of silly, not being able to speak to the complex technical issues and say, look, this is the United States of America. It is a representative government, and we want the devil that we know rather than the devil that we don't know. And until the corporations totally govern this country, which is what's happening, we're still going to fight on this very pragmatic level. We're not going to impress anyone in the academy, but you might impress your neighbor enough that he goes with you to tell your local representative, do not vote for this because you answer to me. Not caring if you look stupid. He's going to say, oh, well, I've gotten all these reports from the think tanks and the public-private partnerships and the studies, and they're all so impressively packaged and marketed. And, you know, the chambers of commerce spend big bucks. And the leadership institutes, those are just grooming organizations for professionals. And they teach people to learn all of these buzzwords, and they just speak the language. Like, I always thought that stuff was lousy, but now I know why. Because it is grooming, and it is indoctrinating, and it is brainwashing. So your public officials and, you know, civic leaders, community leaders, they have all been bombarded with that garbage. So they're going to look at you like you're silly if you say, we're in a representative government. You know, the rule of law actually holds here, and I care about my freedoms, and I don't want to be enslaved. And they're going to say, ho, 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 that's never going to happen. They're going to scoff at you because they've been brainwashed. We're not doing that here. That's just Tulsa. They've done it. They're doing it. And they all have this. So if you learn the patterns, if they react with a scoff, if your public official says, come on, Mindy, you've just been watching that Romanello too much, you know that they are in on it. They might not know, but they are. Because the appropriate response of any public official is, you know what, I have heard that. I really value the public trust that you have endowed in me, and, you know, I'm going to look into it. And actually, I've heard from a couple of other people who are concerned about this. And, you know, that's when I became a public servant in this country, I signed up for this. So I'm going to check it out, and I'm going to have an open mind. And if they don't respond that way, yep. Trust your gut. Not to be on a soapbox, sorry.
I would like to ask a question. As if you would happen to be a rancher and like through the USDA, they have offered like a drought assistance program.
Yep.
And if you have signed up for that, does that put you in a dangerous place to receive financial assistance during this drought program they offered?
Well, I mean, you know, not knowing that specific program, I think somebody might have asked me about a similar type of program in McAllister. I would say all federal government programs are Trojan horses, and they have strings attached. So it is, the USDA right now is tracking and tracing all kinds of, you know, your whole beef production is tracked and traced, right? And they want to track every single species from, and you know, you go into the grocery store and it says from farm to table. Oh, how nice, I know where it came. You know, we think it's nice, but it's not nice. So the USDA is doing all of that kind of tracking and tracing, and they are the major agency involved in the rural reset. So I'm going to give this file. Yes, they're doing broadband. I mean, I have them on my on that partner report with the UN. I think they contract with the USDA. So I'm going to share a file folder from a McAllister presentation that's really just on the land grab, and it has documents about the USDA involvement, and they are one of the major government agencies that is imposing the reset. Now, I'm not sure exactly how, but I'm sure it's like track, trace, quotas. You know, they're going to want to give priority to new and indigenous farmers over, you know, established agricultural enterprise.
They can't track that greenhouse emissions in your crop production if they don't have the broadband in place for the.
Right. Yeah. So this all stands and falls on the technology infrastructure. They cannot measure, manage, and monetize without the 5G broadband, totally connected Internet of Things. So that infrastructure has to come down. And what would really be great is if the people working with law enforcement and in a peaceful manner disassemble it and then give it back to the company in a box. And you say, you may have this back. We're going to have to, I think, find scrappy solutions like that.
Something I've noticed is my family started doing ranching and stuff, and they introduced the tax exempt as an incentive to, you don't pay taxes on farm things you're buying, but it's just another way for them to track everything you're buying.
Yes.
Like if you're trying to do a small scale farm operation, it's just one more way for them to keep track of everything.
Yes.
So we declined it because
Yes, and all of these tax breaks, you know, this is really a tough point because, okay, so I am convinced that the whole, I call it the corona apocalypse with COVID, it was just about demolishing the economy. It was about reconfiguring supply chains, putting in the track trace surveillance infrastructure, and scaring people to death and traumatizing them, you know? Because then you have a bunch of broken people that they can make money fixing or betting against. But so what the COVID reaction did was, like Klaus says, it destroyed the economy. So people are going to need relief from taxes. People are hurting in their pockets, but offering these tax breaks contributes to that goal of bankrupting the government. So we're really in a pickle. And you know, when like Governor Stitt offers lots of tax incentives to, you know, woo some giant multinational corporation here to Oklahoma, buyer beware, because we want those corporations to pay the taxes. You know? I mean, we actually, this is something that conservatives have to understand, like, we actually want to make sure that our government is funded so that the private philanthropists don't come in and do it for us, because at least for maybe a little while longer, we have the power to audit our government and its expenditures. So just, you know, I think you're absolutely right to notice that when they offer these programs, it is about, you know, developing a catalog of the inventory that you have and what your means of and scale of production is, but then it's also about bankrupting the government so that it can be privatized.
I wanted to ask about BRICS.
BRICS,
Yes, go back to our currency is so worthless. It is.
It's all fake.
That's right, it's all fake. And they are
Not to be
trying,
a
these
cynic.
countries are trying to go back to gold-backed money. And there's more countries going to join in January, and there's 41 more countries that are interested. That will be 61% of the world that will be gold-backed.
Yeah.
That is good news, isn't it?
Well, it's good news for them.
Yes.
And actually, I think you know, if we go to money that is backed by gold, you know, I'm at the point where I think if anyone in humanity is gonna have a win, I'm for them. You know, so that would be good. I think the writing is on the wall that America has been chosen for destruction.
Yep.
Okay, and we have to face that fact. And people here do think, well, we've got our guns, so we're going to fend it off. It's not the guns. When we're moving to this system of control, you know, and when we're looking at the whole scale management of all of our transactions, interactions, dealings, everything that goes into an economy, which just means exchange. You know, when the currency that we use is just a fiction, we're in trouble. And when they control that and decide that they're done with it, what can we do? Well, really, I think, wouldn't it be cool if we actually all learned how to provide for ourselves and stop buying all of this garbage that we don't need and doing things that we don't need to do. And maybe, you know, once they reset America, then there's some good things that can come from it.
Everything in the stock market. The banks quit giving us anything back on the money we had in savings. I don't know how in the world they keep that worthless stock market up.
Because it is all about perception, and that, I know we've got to end. So what this new economy deals in is social credit, right? That means opinions about whether or not something is good. Like, is it good to jaywalk? You know, in China, there's that example of China where somebody jaywalks and then their picture's plastered on a billboard to shame them. So this economy runs on perception management. And if we all think that the dollar is worth $1, then it works all right. And they have masterfully done that. So now if somebody wants to call our bluff and say your dollar isn't worth $1, it's worth nothing, and oh, give us all your farmland, we're going to have to figure out what to do about that. And if we know that we were brought down by our over-reliance on perceptions of values rather than the real stuff, maybe we can use that to our advantage, you know? So if we take back the narrative about what all of this is about, we actually have a real source of power.
Right, we outnumber them. We do.
Yeah, and you know, what people think about stuff matters, so public opinion matters. All the buzzwords about trust, oh, people don't trust the government, they only trust business now. That's a propaganda line. They're trying to tell you what to think because it does matter who you trust, and the public's opinions about legitimacy, these do matter, they're powerful. So if we get everybody to say, I just watched that movie, The Network, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. I mean, really, we all need to repent of our sins and ask God's mercy. But after that, then we all have to say, we're not going to take this anymore. It is an evil system. It's going to control children. It's going to control the elderly, the vulnerable. It's going to control everybody. And it aims really to destroy people's souls. So, you know, if we can realize how important that narrative is and gain some confidence in our ability to contribute to a better narrative, then that's some hope. That's a reason for hope, I think. So.
Okay. Thank you for coming. We really appreciate it. This has been wonderful.
Oh, you're welcome, John. And thank you for being so patient.